Good kids don't happen by accident. They're shaped by what we expect, what we allow, and what we choose to correct. Welcome to Good Kids Don't Happen by Accident, the podcast about raising accountable kids in a world full of excuses. I'm your host, Coach Steve. Over the last 30 years, I've heard thousands of conversations between parents and teachers, parents and coaches, parents talking to other kids about their own kids. I've sat through conferences, phone calls, meetings, hundreds of emails. There are 5 words that I heard over and over again. 5 words that sound completely harmless, but can quietly shape the way a child sees themselves. Those 5 words, that's just who he is, or that's just who she is. Maybe you heard them before. Maybe you've said them before about your own kids. He's just shy. She's always been stubborn. He's not really a math kid. She's always unorganized. That's just who he is. And every time I heard a parent tell me those words, every time, I always found myself wondering something. What if they aren't? Let me tell you a story. I remember a student I had years ago, barely spoke during the first month of school, and she's still on my top 10 list of quietest students I ever had. She didn't talk to me. She didn't talk to the other teachers. She didn't even talk to her classmates. If I asked her a question, she'd just look down and pretend she didn't hear me. If we worked in groups, she'd fade into the background and let everyone else talk. And there was more than one adult in that school and in her life that always described her the same way. She's just shy. And honestly, she was. But I never believed that was where her story had to end. So instead of accepting that label, I started giving her opportunities. Small ones, very small ones at first. Every morning she'd walk into class. I'd quietly ask her to please just answer one question today. I promise, just one question, and I won't call on you anymore. Eventually she agreed, and before long that one question became 2, and then 2 turned into 3. When she finally felt comfortable answering a few questions in class, I started asking her to help the kids sitting around her. Then she got a little more confident. She started to actually speak to her teammates when she was in small groups. Eventually, she reached the point where she could stand up at the board and teach a lesson to the whole class. And at first, I'll be honest, this kid hated every second of it, and she let me know. But I'm proud of her because she didn't quit. And then we noticed that about mid-year, we all saw something incredible happen. Little by little. It was a subtle shift, but all the teachers saw it. Her confidence had definitely grown. You could see it in the way she walked, in the way she talked, the way she carried herself in the building. And by the end of the year, this kid was volunteering on her own. The same child everyone described as just shy had turned into one of our classroom leaders. There's one thing I forgot to tell you. This was also one of the brightest students I have ever taught. In fact, there were days I honestly thought this child was smarter than I was. But her challenge was never intelligence. It was confidence. She had all the ability in the world. She just needed someone to help her see it. And looking back, the truth is we didn't create that confidence. We just uncovered it. So here's what I learned. Children often become the people we repeatedly tell them they are. If you constantly hear, you're lazy, you're stubborn, you're irresponsible, you're shy, those words slowly become part of the kid's identity. And once something becomes part of our identity, it's really hard to change. There's a big difference between describing a behavior and defining a child. Saying, you forgot your homework today. That's very different than saying, you're so irresponsible. One describes a choice, the other describes a person. And children believe us, especially when we're their parents or the most important adults in their lives. I've watched children completely change, not because they suddenly became different people, but because someone believed they could become more than the label they were given. As parents, Our words we tell our kids matter, but the labels we repeat, those labels become the story children tell themselves. So, what can we do instead? How can we help our kids? First, try to describe the behavior, not the child. Instead of always saying you're lazy, try saying, hey, you didn't put much effort into that assignment. Let's try to do better. Those are two different messages. Second, leave room for growth. Instead of always saying, he's just shy, try telling people when they're around, oh, he's still building his confidence. We're getting better at it every day. And that one word still, that changes everything. And third, and I think most importantly, speak to who your child is becoming, not just who they are today. If you've never read the essay, Father Forgets, by a guy named W. Livingston Larned, his last name is Larned, I certainly hope you'll take a few minutes, find it online this week. It is one of the most powerful things I've ever read about parenting, and it connects beautifully to today's message. If you take one thing from today, please let it be this. Children should never feel trapped by the labels adults give them. Our words should become stepping stones, not ceilings. Because good kids don't happen by accident. They're built through expectations, encouragement, accountability, and adults who never stop believing in who they can become. Until next time, keep believing in your kids because they're still becoming. Take care.